Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hiker Sessions. And I'm really excited to have fellow Mainer Jackie, or as we call her on the trail, Solo, on this episode today. I first ran into Solo. We were just chatting a little bit offline about it at the Trimpey Shelter, and that was Nobo Mile 524.6. I remember that shelter because that was my first 20-mile day. And I didn't do a lot of 20-mile days, but that was the first day I had actually made it 20 miles. And we tented there together and chatted. And, we each found out we were from Maine, so that was pretty cool. And then I don't know if I got ahead of you or we kept kind of, leapfrogging each other. Never really saw you again until that I remember was just north of Branchville, New Jersey, at that camp tent site. I showed up there late at night. It was mile,
I remember.
1334.8. So it was like 800 miles in between, which is
It's
right? It's so weird on the AT how you do that. And then we met in Kent, Connecticut again. I was there visiting some of my hoop buddies from college. We chatted a little there, and we both stayed at the inn at the Long Trail in Vermont.
hmm
And you actually had a fan in your room.
Yeah, my room was nice and cool and comfy. I think
Yeah,
you guys were sweating in yours.
yeah, we melted literally in ours. And then again in Hanover, we met at Murphy's Bar. You were with a couple other thru hikers you'd been hiking with, and then really from Hanover on, we on and off hiked quite a bit together, especially in Maine.
Yes.
Uh, we had our little tramley going, and then we did the 100-mile wilderness together, which was cool. And then we'll talk a little bit about your journey to the summit of Katahdin. So first, probably just give a little. Now that we've got the how we met and everything, just a little bit of background about yourself. I've already mentioned that you're from Maine, but kind of like what do you do? Where do you live? Just give us a little bit of info.
Yeah, sure. So I live in Portland, and I'm a massage therapist. I work at a chiropractor's office in Falmouth, and I also work for myself too on Fridays, which is how I'm able to do this today. And I've had a really intimate relationship with the woods for a very long time. I moved to Maine right after college. I was a whitewater rafting guide, and I bought a camp. I actually showed it to you because I was with you and we were driving by on 201. I don't know if you remember, right up in the Caratunk area, so which is right where that crossover is on the Kennebec River. So I have a lot of experience with hiking in New Hampshire and Maine. Hiking down south was very new for me. That was a whole different and beautiful animal, but there was a lot of fare there that I don't have hiking up here. I hike quite a bit by myself. I backpack and do overnights by myself, and it was just different to be down south in an unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, I totally agree. What was your start date again? What day did you start?
April 7th.
Okay, April
I,
7th. So
I did
two
at
days before me
Amicalola.
then. Two days
Yeah, I
before
did.
me
Did
then.
you do
Yeah,
the approach?
I did. Did you as
Yes.
well?
Yes, I did.
So, and then your summit date at the end on Katahdin.
Was September 9th, I want to say. It was a day after yours.
Okay, September 9th. And who did you summit with? I remember you had a special person with you.
Well, my brother was going to summit with me, but he didn't end up doing it. But he did come up and pick me up.
Okay,
He
cool.
wasn't feeling well and he didn't want to hold me back. So, which was kind of good because it was really just like I have Abnaki in my ancestry, so in like that whole area, and the family's tribe was Penobscot, so that whole area is just very special to me, and it was just kind of cool to hike up there, like on my own. It was funny. There was another hiker who came up behind me, and he'd through hiked a few years back, and he was like, "Is your pack full?" He's like, "You could have left some stuff down below." And I was like, "I'm just moving slow because I don't want this to be over. It's not about pack weight. I know when I get to the top, it's going to be through, and I don't want it to be." So, but there was actually, it was bad weather, which it wasn't like the best weather to hike. So there was a bunch of people sort of, I think there was like 20 of us maybe, like gathering at A-Ball Bridge at that campground to get over and then there was like we stayed at the Birches, and there was a couple of people in different places. So when we got up, it was like there was day hikers there, and I'll never forget this. I'll never forget it. There was day hikers, and they're struggling to climb up Katahdin on that right before you get to the plateau there. And I just look up, and there is like 25 through hikers swinging up this mountain like the Planet of the Apes, just like effortless. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but it was great. It ended up clearing up a little bit at the top, just like wind and the clouds pushing through, so I could see a little bit from up there. But yeah, it was just pretty cool to be up there with so many people. The emotion and energy was just like incredible, overwhelming, really.
Yeah, I bet it was. And although you were around other people, you said that your plan was just to do it yourself because your brother couldn't do it, unfortunately, because of his, not feeling well. So I think that, to me, that kind of fits to your trail name, right? Solo. And just real quick, how did you get that trail name, real quick?
Well, I actually came onto the trail with a set of intentions. I love being in the woods. I've always loved it. But I also was on the trail to do some deep soul work. So I wanted to be by myself. I wanted to be able to talk to the trees and talk to the plants and sing and dance and cry and whatever it was that took, and sometimes swear my way up a mountain if it was getting to be too much, which I did, working through all of that energy. And so that's what I would say to people. Oh, I hike alone. I want to hike alone. So then they just started calling me Solo.
That's funny. That's really funny. How are you feeling physically post-trail? I know we've texted a little bit, and you sent me a video of you somewhere in the White Mountains in the snow, but so I'm assuming you're feeling pretty good. But how did you feel right after, and compared to maybe now physically?
There's definitely, I would say, I've been hiking every weekend. So when I got off the trail, I didn't go right back to work. I had 3 more weeks, and then I only went back to work. I just started back to work full time this week. So I've been in the woods every weekend. So not really maybe much of a difference as far as like stamina and strength. Definitely a little bit of weight gain for sure coming back off the trail because I didn't stop eating how I was eating. So that's probably going to take a little bit to balance out. But the strength is still there, which is great, which is really good.
Yeah, it does feel. No, I hear you on the weight gain. It's just, I don't know if I'm eating as much as I was, but it's just having it available, right? When it's available, you're going to eat it. So I think that's something that, I think that's something that affects most everybody. You just can't stay that active again as usual. So you've been hiking every weekend. Do you have any like whether it's in cement or just kind of like floating around in your brain, like any bigger hikes, like multi-day or big sections, or even some kind of a through hike? Any plans to do something like that bigger again?
That actually, it's cool that you brought that up, because I was actually feeling really depressed when I got off the trail. And the only thing that brought me out of that was to plan another adventure. And right when I was like really struggling with this and just feeling like I wasn't having a hard time coming back into like society, but I was having a hard time not being in the woods. It really felt like I lost a relationship. And so the only thing that pulled me out of that was planning another adventure. And right around the same time, the universe provides, the trail provides, and the person who owns my apartment called me and asked if she could sublet my place for July and August of next year. So I have those 2 months off. So I'm definitely doing the long trail. That's on the list. And I know that I'm still going to do the section that we already did. Like, I'll do it from beginning to end. But other than that, I was thinking Kilimanjaro. I know you did that, and I figured I'd pick your brain about that sometime too, but I'm not sure if July and August is a good time to tackle that mountain.
Yeah, so. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that offline. I'd love to talk to you about that. Well, that's cool, and I can totally relate on just having things. It's a long way off, right? July and August, but you kind of get excited about it and start planning and things like that. But let's rewind on the AT a little bit. When you were standing on the summit of Springer, and you had some experience, it sounds like I did, when you were standing there on the summit of Springer after doing the approach trail and ready to head out on a 2,200 mile journey, did you feel like you were dialed in, like whether it was your gear or your confidence in your ability to finish or not? Like, what were the thoughts that were going through your mind?
No, I was scared. I was very scared. I was out there by myself. I was, like I said, unfamiliar territory. I wasn't feeling the confidence I normally feel when I step into the woods in Maine. I didn't do any real shakedown hikes, and I bought a lot of new gear for this trip, specifically with weight in mind, because I did a lot of research prior to the trip, and everyone's like, just make sure your weight's down. Is the biggest thing. Like, make sure your weight's down. And I don't know if you've ever read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. But I was definitely feeling that on the approach. I wanted to be throwing things out of my pack, and it's amazing what you learn that you can live without to get the weight down. So I was definitely, yeah, I was scared. I never had a doubt in my mind that I knew I would make it. I knew, because I'm stubborn, so I knew it was going to happen for me. But I was definitely feeling a lot of fear.
Yeah, you mentioned your confidence. What do you think was draining the drain on your confidence that you don't usually have? Was it just unfamiliar settings, or do you think it was something else?
I think it was unfamiliar settings, and I think it was that I couldn't just call somebody to pick me up. I mean, I could have like gotten off trail at any point, but I had set out to do something, and I was going to complete it, and I was afraid to sleep by myself at night with people that I didn't know. Um, I was more afraid of the people than I was of the animals, to be truthful on that. Although I was afraid of the bears down south because they just don't behave like they do in Maine down there. So sleeping by myself, being by myself hiking and injuring myself, like all of these thoughts were just in my head. Um, I wasn't. I was excited. It was also, I guess I should say, I was excited too because I knew this was going to be a huge learning process for me, and I learned so much. Man, did I learn on this hike that it's incredible. Both like just speaking in terms of gear and how to actually like do the technically do the through hike, but also about myself and about like what the woods means to me. So it was a mixture of both, but the fear was definitely winning in Springer.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned what you learned, like someone who's aspiring to do, any of the long trails, the through hikes or things like that. Like, what are a couple things that you would offer for advice to them based on things you learned, or even one thing if you want, just a couple things that come to mind?
So people have actually asked me I've sort of had like imposter syndrome when I got off the trail. I felt like because everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, congratulations! I'm so proud of you. That's so amazing." And I was like, "But it didn't feel like I did anything too amazing, right?" I was you're just walking in the woods all day long. And if I think about it, what got the three things that really got me through this trip? I came on the trail willing to learn. I came on the trail willing to be uncomfortable, and I came on the trail with resources. Like I had planned for this. It took for a year. I was just setting money aside. So I had a decent amount of money coming into the trail, which was comforting to me. Especially like I sent you a picture of my sprained ankle. Like I sprained my ankle pretty bad in Pennsylvania, and I was able to get a hotel room for 6 days and rehab that. And if I didn't have the resources to do that, my trip probably would have been over because there was no way that I could have hiked on that. So those three things are definitely what I have to keep in mind, especially for the long trail too, because I'm sure I'll learn new stuff on that trail. I loved Vermont. Vermont was my favorite for sure. So I'm excited to get back there. But definitely those three things are what got me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, all three of those are awesome. The one that kind of jumped at me right out, that willing to learn. Like, I don't care how many thousands or hundreds of miles you backpack, I still think there's just so many different experiences just every day that you can always learn from. And I think the moment you think you know everything about, like, just in general too, right? Not just backpacking or hiking. Like, I think that's the day when you need to question yourself, like, just when you think you know it all. What expectations did you have for the trail? It's a general question, but like just between, people you meet, or what surprised you is maybe a better question about the trail based on your expectations of what it was going to be like?
So my expectations, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I planned on doing a lot of soul work. So what I mean by that is, everyone has sort of their life, and there's this list of like accomplishments and regrets and all this emotion around that. And I wanted to sort of just let that all go and give it to the woods. And
Yeah.
I have to tell you that the trail was everything that I dreamed it would be and more. It was like the best thing I have ever done for myself, hands down. And one of the things that surprised me really was, I hiked by myself during the day. I think a lot of people sort of kind of did their own thing during the day, but then they would meet up with their group or their trail family, their tramley, whatever it is, at night. But I actually, if I went, like, there was a couple of times when I would like we talked about Zeke a little bit earlier, someone I hiked with from Knock all the way to just about Connecticut. Connecticut, I think, was the last time that we ended up meeting up. But if there was some days here and there in between, he'd get off to see his wife or whatever, and I'd be by myself, and I would truly be by myself for a few days. And my mood would start to change after not seeing somebody for a couple of days. And I never thought that would happen, because my hikes in Maine were always 2 nights, 3 nights, not a big deal. But if you go a decent stretch of time in the woods and don't have anyone to talk to but the trees, that does something to you.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise to me. So I learned that about myself, because I'd always consider myself a little bit of like a loner, but maybe I'm just not so much.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, because for the vast majority of people, start out alone, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah, for
like
sure.
other our friends Steve and Olivia, husband and wife, they obviously did it together. But other than that, and then maybe a couple of other partners that were doing it together, everybody starts out alone. And honestly, I thought that I would just probably hike it the whole way alone too. And you bring up a good point. You are alone a lot of times during the day, but I think that connectiveness when you get to the campsites and like, hey, let's meet here and things like that. When we talk about, I'd read a lot about the community and listened to a lot of podcasts. There's a podcast I listen to, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. And I think, he talked a lot about a community, and that's why I kind of maybe zeroed in on it. You mentioned our friend, Zeke, that you probably were the closest to, and that I spent, a decent amount of time with too. Unfortunately, when we got off the trail and stuff, we had learned of his passing, and I know that affected me greatly. And I was trying to process it in my head, like, you only knew this person for about 2 weeks or so, right? Like that I was around him a lot, but I think the bonds that you form out there are just so strong, and you're just going through the same things, and so. And then I was feeling like, if I'm going through this, what must, Jackie or, Solo be going through? Can you just talk? And you can get as deep or as wave top as you want with it. But like, what was that like, after making that, the relationships we all did on the trail, and then kind of losing a person that was on the trail?
Yeah, so Zeke and I, we met actually. We were kind of, in the beginning, it's just like, and you probably remember, it was hard to even find a tent spot. There was so many people. Like, I think I stayed, because I was doing 13-mile days to start, so I went to Gooch, my second night. I was at Gooch, and that's when like sort of Zeke and I had met, but we didn't really start. He was with a couple of his buddies from North Carolina, and then we just like leapfrogged a little bit here and there. And I'd actually, another important thing, just a little helpful tip before I forget, make sure you have extra gaskets for your water filter. For your Sawyer water filter when you're on the trail, because I lost mine, and that was something everyone was like, oh, you should ask Zeke, he has a couple. And I was like, who's this like Zeke? And then we actually stopped and had a conversation climbing up into out of Knock, and I was starting to feel, and I hadn't really linked up with anybody yet. I was just, so there was a couple of like younger kids in their 20s that seemed to always be at the same site that I was at, but I was feeling really nervous about being in the Smokies by myself, and I was like, hey, what's your plan for the Smokies? And he was like, I'm going to do 15-mile days. And I was like, great. I want to be hot on your heels. Cool if I just pop my tent next to yours through the Smokies because I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. And that was just Zeke. I got to know him. That's who he was. He's got 3 daughters. He was in law enforcement. Like, he just, I think, was like looking out for me. And so that was sort of our arrangement. From there all the way to Connecticut, and I got really close to him, and to his wife is actually from Maine. Shelley's from Maine. So we bonded over that, and whenever we would get off, he would get off to resupply, I would go with them. And I actually spent 3 days, Memorial Day weekend, with him and his entire family in Petersburg, Virginia. So you just sort of, when you find somebody that you connect with, and we worked because he was so fast. I don't even remember this about him. He was such a fast hiker that he would get to where we were going to be, and I would always have the second best tent spot because he would save it for me. So that was pretty cool too. And we just, we just got really close, and I got close to his family too. And learning about his passing was very hard. I found out the day after it happened, his wife had texted me, and I called up a bunch of people. I didn't know what to do. It was like, what do I do with all this emotion? It was just, and we had talked a few times off the trail, and just a week and a half prior, we had been talking about hiking Kilimanjaro together. Just like such a shock for that to happen. But the cool thing about the trail is just Shelley being around, because she was driving up to see Zeke all the time until he got too far north, is that she met a lot of the other hikers too. So I actually, when I found out about Zeke, I flew to North Carolina to stay with the family for a few days. And Caboose in season 1 came too, when they found out, because they wanted to be there to show their support. And it was just such a beautiful weekend of healing and going through photographs. And we went through all of Zeke's photographs and wrote on the back where they were so she could put them in an album. And he had this beautiful service, and they had this slideshow for his service in the very last picture. And I even get emotional thinking about it. It was this picture I took of him the morning we got up early, and it was the morning we were going into Damascus. And he was walking on the trail, and I don't know if you remember, the grass was super high coming up over that point, walking into Damascus until you come down into it. And the sun was just coming up, and it's like this beautiful glow. And as Zeke's in the distance, just walking off into it, and it's just right here,
Yeah, it's funny how, those visuals still, because if I'm having a down day or something, I have this kind of collage. You can't see it right here. There's a collage of 12 4x6s that were some of my favorite photos from the trail, and literally just looking at it cheers me up.
Yeah.
And I too have a picture of Zeke that I took of him. I don't know if you remember. It was Unionville, New York. There was that general store, and when you leave town, you kind of walk through this nature preserve, kind of a long way around it. And we had stopped. It was funny because there was a chair there or a bench or something. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I wish they had more of those out along the AT every few miles. And he sat down, and I took a picture of him. And it was the time of the night. We had just one little out before our tent site, and the sun was just starting to go down, and there was a glow, and it was funny. And I took that picture, and that when I think of Zeke, I'll forever remember that picture that I took of him. So it's interesting just going back through pictures, because I don't remember all the names of the shelters and things, but I remember exactly where when I've been doing this series or these interviews, I can remember pretty much off the top of my head where I met everyone and everything we did. So it's been cool. What thinking about the trail, we have all these memories and great times. What were some of your low points on the trail? And because we all have them, I don't care who you are, you're going to have them either mentally or physically, like you mentioned with your ankle. And what got you through those low points to the some of the Katahdin?
Yeah. Well, I think overall, I loved being in the woods, and there was a lot of low points. going to tell anybody that this was like, even though I say this is the best thing I've ever done for myself, there wasn't a smile on my face the entire time. There was a lot of low points, but I just be like the fact that I loved being in the woods and that was so like inherently mine, they would turn around quickly. They passed. At the end of the night, when I was going to sleep, every single night, I was grateful to be where I was, no matter what I went through that day. The ankle sprain was a huge challenge. I thought I broke it. I was in Pennsylvania, of course. And I just switched over because I was wearing Ultra Lone Peaks for the first part of the trail, but I was just ripping through them. Every 250 miles I had to replace them. So I switched over to the Olympus, which have a bigger sole. And I think that's why when I rolled my ankle, it was just, I heard a crack. And like I was just laying there like crying by myself on the trail. And I was like, oh, the thing that I didn't want to happen has happened. And then after I was able to like get myself together a little bit, I did some tests on it, and I was like, all right, it's not broken, just a bad sprain. And I hiked 2 miles out of the woods and took the most expensive Uber ride I've ever taken in my entire life to the closest town, which was Port Clinton, was where that happened. And that was a low point. I called my brother, I was crying. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And he was like, come home and sit it out for 2 weeks, and then you can fly back. And I was like, no, because I'll go home and I'll be like, oh, I'll just do the second half next year. I had to stay where I was at if I was going to make it work. So just I think just perseverance, I was going to hike the trail. There was no way around it. And just that acceptance of that just helped me to move through those low points, because this was going to happen one way or the other. So I could change my attitude about it, or it was going to be a miserable trip.
You mentioned staying in you stayed there at a hotel 6 days to recoup. We didn't stay in tents 100% of the time. With some trail towns and things like that, just maybe I'd love to have you speak generally on just your thoughts of, you don't even have to specify a trail town, but just the trail towns in general. The community, Trail Angels, Trail Magic, and just things like that. Just some thoughts of that kind of thing. The community. Yeah,
so the communities were great. Especially, obviously, I always made sure to stay at the hostels that were a part of the trail experience, like Uncle Johnny's and Woods Hole, and but any other time I stayed off trail, especially in the southern states, I got a hotel room, because they weren't that much more expensive than the hostels, maybe by $20. And for an extra $20, you get your own room. Nobody's snoring, nobody's farting. You get your own bathroom. You can watch TV. It's private. So I actually did that more than hostels. But the Trail Angels were just incredible. All different types. People who have hiked the trail, people who love hikers, people who are riding along beside their spouse, just all different types of people. New Jersey, I was kind of blown away by. New Jersey and Vermont, I think. New Jersey was just incredible to see. It was so hot. We were in that heat dome. I don't know if you remember, 90 degrees.
Oh, I remember.
You do.
Oh, yeah.
We were drenched in sweat. I think we hiked a little bit when we were in there, too. Every time you came to a trail crossing, gallons and gallons and gallons of water. Incredible that they would do this, because the water didn't taste that good in New Jersey. So it was nice to have that fresh water there. And then also, Vermont was I just loved everything about that state. Everything about that state. The people, the community was just so incredible. Everyone you met just means so much to have somebody just take your trash or offer you I don't even drink Coke. I was so excited to get a Coke. It's just those little things that just you would never ever imagine they would mean so much, but they do. People recognize that you're on this incredible journey and they want to be helpful, and that's just such a beautiful thing.
And they always seem to be more excited doing that than we were on the trail, right? I'm they are really excited about doing this.
Yeah.
Which was awesome, that they were really getting something a strong emotional thing out of it. You mentioned Coke. What were some, just real quick, maybe the food things, something that you ate or drank a lot on the trail that you don't usually do at home, And then you were surprised that that became like your thing on the trail.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I get sick of things so quick. I ate a lot. Well, we all ate a lot of processed foods. I didn't have the budget to be eating those freeze-dried, delicious meals 3 times a day. So I ate a lot of like instant potatoes. Can't even look at them now. Ramen noodle, and like just like Slim Jims. I would eat those all day long, and then also a lot of hard candy. I don't know if you remember we met Candyman. He's like, "I'll send you some Jolly Ranchers when you get to the summit," and I was like, "I want them now. I don't want them when I get to the summit."
Yeah. Yeah. Who calls them themselves Candyman, doesn't actually carry candy with them, right?
I know.
Especially a section hiker. I loved Candyman though. He commented on my video like day before yesterday. He put a comment on there and said he was thinking about all of us. So that was great. And then
That is very sweet.
I think I'll end with maybe an unfair question, but I know you a little bit, so I think you can handle it. How do you think the finishing the trail, or for people who don't even finish it, just the experience, how do you think it maybe like has changed you in some small way, or maybe like defined yourself, like in your head to yourself?
It's definitely a wonderful, life-changing experience. I can tell you that one of the biggest lessons that I took from the trail, and because I've always been a warrior about a lot of things in life, and there was a couple of times, I'll just tell you this story real quick. It was actually, I was hiking, I was by myself. The water, I didn't check on far out to see what the water source was going to be like. It was dry, had no water. So I had to go to bed dirty, and I had to go to bed thirsty. And normally I would freak out. I have no water, I'm in the middle of the woods and by myself. And I was just like, stay calm. You got 3 more days before things start happening that shouldn't be happening. Like, you're going to make it. You got water in 10 miles. You get up tomorrow, you're going to be thirsty, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to get there. Stay calm. And I did. I didn't freak out, didn't cry, didn't have a temper tantrum. I had a few of those on the trail. But I got up the next morning, I was dirty, I was still sweaty, I was still thirsty. I started walking, and not a mile down the road, there was a logging road, and someone had dropped a case of Gatorade. And It's just like the trail provides, like, just calm down, stay calm, everything's going to be okay. And like that, I was holding on to that, and that was before Virginia, and that happened very early on the trail, and I was like, hang on to this one, because you can apply this to life, and it's going to make a huge difference for you.
Yeah, I was thinking when you ended that story, it's a great story, and thank you for sharing. And I think it was probably better that it happened early, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been awesome catching up. Please, we've got our numbers, and I'm so fortunate. I put everybody's name in my phone as soon as I get their numbers, and then for a company, I would put AT. So I can just type AT into my phone, and everybody I have comes up. So please, stay in touch. I know you are an adventurer, and we'll definitely talk offline about the Kilimanjaro thing, because
Yes, okay, great.
I think you would love it, because it's not just about the mountain; it's the culture over there, the people, and I really think, knowing you the little bit I do, I think you'd really enjoy it. So thanks again for coming on, and definitely don't be a stranger.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks.
All right, see ya.